only 1 out of every 4 students in India makes it to higher education. That is a number the NEP 2020 puts on the table. But for the first time, technology is not waiting for the system to change. AI is already inside the classroom, rewriting curricula, personalizing learning, and reaching students the traditional system never could. Today, the COO of one of the highly ranked global universities with a campus in India is here to tell us whether AI can finally close that gap. This is TOI AIQ Talks. I am Sonia Singh and you are watching TOI AIQ Talks, a series that builds up to the TOI AI Quotient Awards this September, India's premier recognition platform for enterprises and leaders turning AI into real measurable results. Today, we are in an industry that shapes everything else, education. And specifically, the question of whether AI can do for higher education what decades of policy could not. Our guest today has spent his career at the intersection of world-class education, institutional leadership and technology. He is the COO of the University of Southampton's India campus. Vishal Talwar, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Thank you.
And alongside us today as our knowledge partner, co-founder and CEO of ADROSONIC, Mayank, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sonia, and I'm really looking forward for the show as someone who spends a lot of time in talent, grooming the talent. Really looking forward to interact with Vishal to see how AI is not changing the shape of education, but also how it's preparing the workforce for the real world.
And we'll take your experiences also into
Really
consideration. Yeah. Vishal, let's start with you. India's higher education system. Limited number of seats, highly competitive scenario. What is your assessment here?
Well, thank you very much for the question. I think having spent most of my experience and my professional life working with students, with faculty, and many other stakeholders to create the right kind of learning experience, which is what I'm doing in University of Southampton's India campus as well. I think we've come a long way, in my opinion, right? If you look at 1947, if you look at the number of colleges that we had, number of universities, about 20 odd universities at that time, about 500 odd colleges, and serving essentially about 3 lakh odd people at that time. So we've come a long way. Obviously, a lot of focus has been given on a concentration on creating scale with the number of universities. It has also given us a certain level of access, right? Access was predominantly what was the major objective. The idea was to be able to ensure that a lot more people have access to higher education, and that was the predominant focus. I think we've come a long way. It's another matter that obviously you have the IITs and the IIMs. You have a lot of people who benefited from the right kind of education. If you look at the kind of CEOs, for example, we have in India or elsewhere in the world, the kind of impact they've been creating, that tells me that there has been obviously a lot of positive. Having said that, I think it's also a function of what concentrations of excellence existed. Obviously, we are aware that there is variance. Now, that's something that is the next step. How do we ensure that we are able to reduce that variance in terms of quality and create greater excellence? That's, of course, the next objective.
But 1 in 4 students are able to go for higher education. Whose failure is it?
Well, I think, obviously the question that comes to my mind is that what are the other 3/4 doing, right? So you talked about, the gross enrollment ratio of 25%. It's reached to about 29 odd percent. But there are many factors that will contribute towards why somebody is not able to access a certain kind of education. These could be geographical factors, which means it creates more complexities of access. These could be socio-cultural factors. These could be economic factors, right? So you'll have rural communities. You might have people who may not have access to the kind of funds to be able to go there. And of course, it could also be a function of the kind of schooling they might have had. So there are many different factors. I wouldn't necessarily want to pinpoint one particular element. I think it takes many people to be able to create the higher education ecosystem and the schools, and the kind of learning that they're providing. You have higher education institutions. You have obviously the government. So they all play their role. in being able to ensure a certain kind of progress as far as higher education is concerned. So it's multiple factors at play.
So if we actually talk about NEP 2020, do you think it is a generational shift? Those credit transfers that we talk about in international universities, the flexible curriculums, the multidisciplinary education, do you think we'll be able to sustain it? Can it be a game changer for India?
Look, if it's about the policy, I think it's a very, very good policy. It's a very radical shift from the policies that were there. You have to remember that the new education policy 2020 came along, I think, about 35 odd years after the previous one. So I think what the new education policy does well is it identifies the areas that are required to be worked on to ensure that we are able to create global level learning, education, career outcomes, learning outcomes, student experiences. So whether it's the multidisciplinarity, whether it is industry engaged curriculums, whether it is research focus, whether it is the focus on languages, for example. I think that's one more point about the access to education. You talked about the 1/4, what happens to the other 3/4. I think a lot of these factors are things that the NEP has obviously identified as areas for development. Once again, it's about the policy and also it's about the implementation, right? So the implementation requires obviously the government in terms of the investments to make, the kind of regulatory frameworks they create, the kind of access to inclusive pathways they're able to create through the regulatory framework. It requires a lot of investment, and not just on infrastructure but also on, let's say, faculty and many other aspects. The soft infrastructure, which I will call educational institutions, required to do a lot of all that. At the same time, the schools also, right? So the new education policy also addresses, how schooling is being done, whether it's primary or secondary education. So I think a lot of these factors have been identified. Now it's more a question of how the ecosystem together is able to ensure that we reach, to a certain level. It identifies areas. It does realize that it's not just about learning a particular narrow subject. It is about expanding and creating more multidimensionality. It is about being able to think from a creative perspective. It is about problem solving. It is about a focus on the impact that you can create with the learning, and not just getting, let's say, the grades or the marks or whatever else.
Before I get Mayank in, one question. The entire landscape is changing, as you discussed. How has AI got into it now? I mean, the learning process, has it changed? How about higher education? Is it helping out there?
Well, yes. I think, quite frankly, there are different stages to the AI experience, whether it's in India, whether it's anywhere in the world. I think very pleasantly surprised about the level of AI usage that exists, especially amongst the students, right? So I've held workshops, I've been to different locations, and one thing that stands out is that the usage of AI tools is quite prevalent, especially amongst the students. Now it's a question of what the AI tools are being used for, right? There's always a thin line between what I would call as intellectual outsourcing and using those tools to be able to enhance your own critical decision making, to enhance your own problem solving approaches, your own ability to create judgment, your own ability to kind of address the ambiguity, your own ability to trust what is being fed to you as far as the information is concerned. I think that discerning is that next step that is required. A lot of experimentation is currently happening at the faculty level as well. But I would say that largely in the higher education ecosystem, a lot of it is still rotating around experimentation. A lot of it is rotating around, okay, what can I do with this? How can I use a particular tool to be able to, maybe improve my assessments, to be able to create, better questions, to be able to create more personalization. So a lot of this is being used. Now it's more a question of a concerted strategy, institutional level strategy to ensure that you're able to get benefit out of the usage of artificial intelligence.
So basically you train students, but he hires them. So let's go to Mayank here. Mayank, you work with so many organizations across so many sectors, and you hire tech talent yourself, right? So what is your observation? Like Vishal has been saying, the AI challenge, the technology, the knowledge is abundant, but when it comes to judgment, the creative thinking, the problem solving, that is a challenge. Do you also feel that?
I think the challenge is same across everywhere. So the way I see this is like, the whole education system is built on the memory muscles, like, how much you study, how much you know, and all of a sudden the AI is disrupting this, because even if I have not memorized something or I have not gone through that, I can go and work with AI to get that information. So earlier the challenge of whether the information is accessible to me or whether I am aware about that information, as all of a sudden is not a challenge. AI can write a code, it can summarize the information. If I want to get any information about any field, I can get that immediately. So that aspect has changed. Now what is important is that how I am going to use that information. Do I have that skill set, that critical thinking to understand that where the application will be. So it's more of that side of skill that we need to develop among the students or the workforce, to understand the application side of it, the logic aspect, what Vishal was saying, that judgment of that information. And mainly it has been from the solution orientation to the problem orientation. Can you ask the right question? If you know the right question, you will get the answer. The problem is that, do you have the skill to ask the right question? So it is that skill that we need to develop.
So this entire debate, which has been going on for years now, about unemployable graduates, and do you also feel that, like with Smesra, you've started this digital innovation labs. So what employers need and what students are trained for are different. I mean, what is your experience here?
See, when
and maybe Vishal can then react
that.
So
we did this initiative of setting up a innovation lab inside BIT Mesra, and the whole aspect behind or rationale behind it was that when we were hiring students, they were very good academically, but the challenge was, how are you applying your academics knowledge and your IT skills to the business, because ultimately you are solving a problem. So in this lab, what we then realized when we were working with students, a small group of students, and giving them real life AI challenge or tech related challenge, they get very excited about the code, how I can solve this technology problem, participating in hackathon. So the talent wise, it's like, it will surprise you, the kind of solution that they can bring to the table. But the problem is that nobody wants to understand or spend time in terms of what I'm solving, what this piece of code is going to do, how it is going to impact, how it is going to scale, how it is going to change the world, or to solve a specific business problem. And we are also struggling to make them realize that this skill is going to matter. Once you are in the job, you will always be dependent on someone to tell you the execution. But execution is already getting automated. So unless you don't develop this skill, that what problem I want to solve, the critical thinking aspect, you will not be able to change it. So augment this skill of technical or your AI skill or coding skill with the identification or critical thinking or collaboration, all these kind of traits that mostly the right side of brain, and then augmented with your left side of the brain, then only you will be a game changer for them. Then that's the right kind of talent we are looking for.
But these traits, can they be taught?
Yeah, and that's what one of the aspect that, Vishal, when we were working with this group of students, we had to spend a lot of time. Like sometime I also go and visit the lab, and take lecture with them, and then they listen to us because they think that, okay, an employer has visited the campus. But we are working with a small set of, say 15, 20. What I wanted to ask you is that at university level, at a mass level, do you think that, the education system needs some sort of change the way we are teaching right now towards that, the whole grade, and to move towards an application understanding?
So absolutely, I think there's a lot of focus on how do we learn, right? I think there's a transition, there's a recognition. I think the NEP also says it. There's a lot of experimentation that right now is going on. How do I design the curriculum? How do I bring in more models of industry engagement, not just about guest sessions, but how do I bring in the industry into the classroom, right? How do I create centers of excellence? How do I ensure that I'm able to work with not just for a month or two during the internship, but am I able to get the industry's problems into the classroom, help solve those problems, and in the process become more industry ready, right? Now, these are ways and means. For us at the University of Southampton, that's something that, has always been key, right? How do I ensure that the kind of learning that we provide, how do I ensure that the kind of reflective knowledge and learning, the research-oriented knowledge, the depth-oriented knowledge, how does it impact not just society but also practice, right? And so that is definitely a focus. Is everybody doing this at the same keel, at the same level? Not necessarily. But I think what is happening right now is a lot of nudges taking place. There's a lot of move and transition towards a skill set orientation. The practitioners, the employers, the corporates coming into the classroom, they have specific requests, right? We would like a certain kind of skill set. We would like a certain kind of orientation. We would like a certain kind of, let's say, domain specific knowledge as well as holistic understanding. And I think that kind of conversation needs to continue, right? Those silos have to be broken between industry and academia, right? I'm quite happy that there's a lot more interaction right now. There's a lot more knowledge exchange right now. Those silos are being broken.
Interactions are great and they should keep happening, but then what about the online education? There's like an explosion of online classes, and there has been long debate also on that. And how much is AI engine driving that growth?
Look, I think over a period of time, I think because of COVID, I think the kind of let's say extent of edtech organizations, the kind of online learning that was given a fillip has been there. We all know that, right? I think there's a lot of content that exists. There's a lot of delivery that's happening. There's a lot of, let's say, unique tools that are being created. And how do I ensure there's more personalization? How do I ensure that there's more different forms of assessment, like so AI-based assessments? There are different, personalization tools. How do I identify, let's say, the active learners from the, not so active learners? How do I ensure that I'm able to serve the varied nature of skill sets that people have? I think even if I look at that, what I can gather is the completion rates, right? The engagement rates, the finishing rates, those have obviously been, a bit of a question mark. Now, how do you ensure that happens? How do you ensure that the completion rates go up, right? A lot of this will require some forms of hybrid orientation, will require some forms of not just giving the right tools and the technology from an AI perspective, but also about motivation, also about okay, great, you're doing a great job, let's do this better, let's do something else. How do you get that element into the picture is what will help enhance the kind of output you're looking at from a lot of online tools, AI-based tools. Because fundamentally it's about people, fundamentally it's about the mindset, fundamentally it's about not just the tools and the content, but it's also about the kind of counseling you can do, the kind of consulting you can do, the kind of motivation and guidance that faculty is able to provide. A lot of that needs to be balanced.
The classroom experience, of course, kind of motivates you more and all that, but in online there is also this benefit that, okay, if you don't understand something, you can pause it, maybe rewind it, and then understand it again, which may not happen in a class of maybe 30 students or 20 students. There are some cons and there are some pros also.
Absolutely. So the pros and cons, like I said, I think at the end of the day, the kind of access people have got. Look at our country. You talked about the 3/4. You talked about the fact that gross enrollment ratio. The kind of pathways that we need, the kind of skill sets we want to develop. Right, a lot of that will require not just physical, face-to-face learning. It will require learning that's online, learning that's technology-oriented, learning that's enhanced through AI, tools and technological transformation, right? So that's obviously the pros. The fact that you can reach a larger set, the fact that you can provide them a certain kind of quality, and I think that's something that is definitely a pro, right? I think the cons is where many a times it's about how do you bring in the human element to ensure that there's a consistency of the learning pattern. Those are things that are definitely something that the people who are looking at the online platforms would be should be able to bring in or integrate.
This brings us to ADROSONIC Spotlight. So here I'm going to put a real problem on the table, and Mayank will fix it, and then Vishal will tell us whether that fix will fit. So, ready? Okay. So here's a scenario that plays out every year across India. A first generation student from a small town, it can be a Barmer from Rajasthan or maybe Purnia in Bihar. He earns or they earn a seat in a university. They're intelligent, determined. English is a third language. That's an issue. The internet is inconsistent. Now the curriculum was designed for a well-resourced city school. Now by the second month, they're falling behind.
Okay.
So if AI were your only tool, how would you redesign the student's learning experience from the ground up?
So the way I will look at it is, let me just change the slight context in the current, because AI is available. So we are living in the world where information is available in abundance. Right now when this student walks into the university, there's no scarcity of what is being taught in the college, so the information is with him. But the curriculum has been designed for all the students, not only specific for him. And let's say, for an example, that the class strength is 60. So he's one of the 60 students. But his background of all these 60 students are different. And the course is designed for, it's a course which is equivalent for everyone. The same lectures going on. But this fellow is from Purnia or Barmer, you said. Now, let's take Purnia. His first language might be Mathli, and then he learned Hindi, and then English. So that's why you are saying English is the third language. And if he goes into a classroom where they are teaching, say for example, calculus. Now the lecture is going on for everyone, but this fellow might have some issues in the basics of algebra, or let's say there are 3 students. Let's say these both Barmal and Purnia students are batchmates. So Purnia students algebra might have some challenges, and the Barmal student might have some challenges in trigonometry. And there's a third student who is doing pretty well. In a standard format, you will straight away judge that the third student is the best because he is doing well in calculus. How AI can help is you have those assessments, you have those classroom quizzes, you have the kind of question they are asking. If you analyze, the faculty is analyzing, they will understand from there that where is the basic problem. So through the analysis you can know that for student A, his concepts in algebra needs to be brush up, or he need a refresher class, or you need to coach him separately. And for student B, you need a separate coaching or separate support in trigonometry to bring them at the same level. So the first thing it is solving is giving all 3 students an equivalent starting point when they are into the college. And the second challenge, which most of us coming from the rural side of India faces when they go for higher education, is because it's hardly to see people whose English is the first language, and then suddenly you are sitting with someone, say from DPS, throughout our international school students, your confidence level goes down. So you feel hesitant in asking questions in English. Others are asking, and sometimes and then as your confidence goes down, you feel that you are left behind. Now with AI in place, you can go and learn, in your own aspect. You can query that, you can get some answers in your own language, and by doing this, faculty is also understanding that it's the English as a subject is a problem. Physics is not the problem, right? So gradually, when the students start getting concept, because AI is teaching the student in Hindi, his confidence will also gradually go up. So that's the another, because he knows that my concept is right. I just need to learn English, and a language you learn once you start interacting, you learn gradually. The third benefit I see is that it is available 24/7. It's in your mobile. So you are not dependent to go to the faculty. So if you are focused as a student that I want to do best, and I am clear about my goal, then you can use AI to compete in that scenario, and it is giving you an equal platform irrespective of your background. That's how I see.
I would agree with him. I think the equality platform that you're talking about. So a student in Purnia and a student in Mumbai have very similar tools that they access. So I think that gives, in a sense, an equal opportunity, right? And I also feel that the kind of continuous engagement that you talked about, it's not just the domain for AI-based, let's say educational technology companies, but it's also something that a lot of universities are able to use, right? What do you need? You need to be able to ensure that you are engaging continuously with the student. You need to ensure that the kind of 24/7 learning concept we talked about. You have to remember that a lot of students at times would like asynchronous learning at their own time, right? Now these are ways these are technologies by which you're able to actually do that, right? Bringing in such platforms, using those platforms in the right manner in university setups can actually free up a lot of faculty's times to be able to focus on the core aspects of mentoring, core aspects of facilitating, of guidance, of taking the learning to the next level, taking the teaching to the next level, the kind of concepts that they can. So it does free up time, and it's not just about learning; it's also about the administrative tasks, right? So many times you would notice that a lot of people within university setups, have to design workflows that, for administrative processes. What I have noticed and what I've observed and what we've utilized are workflows that are based on AI as well, right? So there's a lot of what I would call as potential collaboration that can be brought into university setups with the core focus of, creating the right kind of learning with the right kind of learning outcomes.
No, amazing, Vishal. See that what then AI helps a professor to be a coach, a guide, and that's what the core role is.
Absolutely.
So what it is doing is taking away all the administrative aspect or the overheads, and then allowing a professor to coach a student to make him ready to face the real world challenge.
Absolutely, I'm with you on that. Absolutely.
And looking at the global picture, are there practices that India can follow, or maybe learnings for India which are adopted in higher education abroad? Related to this only, there was this University of California report which said that the incoming students, they are not able to do high school maths also. Now in an AI era, that is something, is it they could have practiced more? Maybe it's just watching the online videos and understanding the concept but not giving enough practice to those maths problems. Could those be an issue? What do you think?
So look, there are many different examples from across the world. If you look at, let's say, the Arizona State University, I think a lot of the things that they do very well using AI is their focus on student support, student experience, personalization of learning, of identifying, the learners, trying to create what I would call as clusters, and then being able to, serve them, or deliver to them differently. You have examples like the University of Sydney, wherein, there's a lot of focus, asking the faculty, hey, how can we enhance the learning in the classroom? How can we create the right outcomes? How can we create the right kind of, let's say, impact because of how we exist and where we exist as faculty, as teachers, right? At University of Southampton, our focus is entirely on responsible AI, on ethical AI. We've, created those kind of guardrails to ensure that, AI is being used, for particular purposes, by whether it's students, whether it's faculty, right? So, a lot of our focus, in fact, Dame Wendy Hall, she's part of the UN, let's say, committee on responsible AI as well. So there's a lot of focus on these things. Having said that, I think, we can be inspired by these, very good practices from across the world. But obviously, India, has a different, requirement. It is a very different demographic. It's got a different kind of scale. So we can be inspired and we can bring that in. But the way we would like to implement it in the country would be, obviously our own.
Absolutely. So the next question was about that only, that India's higher education system, are we structurally ready for it? Because in our times, there were nothing like internships. But suddenly, for the past 3-4 years, we see even first-year students looking for internships here and there. So, and just doing internships, whether it is actually worth doing, spending that time, or maybe you should have reskilled yourself or learned something better through AI. So do you see these experience-based curriculums in the future, the co-ops that normally we see in US and all? So the project-led, industry-led, those things are going to change?
Absolutely, I think.
I mean, how is it happening at Southampton?
So, for us also, we have, what we call our student innovation projects, right? We have internships, we have placements, wherein there's a constant engagement, with the industry as an individual as well as a group, right? So we get different, complex problems that the industry has. We ask them, can you give us your complex problems? We'll have our students solving them, and not just at the postgrad level, at the undergrad level as well, right? So I think this is where you would notice that the student also engages very well, engages very effectively, is able to contribute a lot more, is quite excited, right? Because the student can also see, hey, what I'm learning is something that is being able to create impact. Yeah.
But Mayank, we've seen in schools now, in our times we used to have those practicals where we would go to chemistry labs and bio labs and physics lab and do stuff, but of late it has been changed to more videos which are shown on the screens in the classrooms, and not really lab work per se.
Yeah.
So do you see that kind of a difference when interns come to your company also, and you look across universities when you go for campus hunting?
Yeah, like what you were saying, it's mainly the purpose that needs to be taught at the I think that's where what Vishal was initially saying about the gap between industry and academia. It's a huge gap, I will say, based on my experience. We are teaching academics, which is very good, the practical aspect, the coding, but nobody is preparing these students to understand what is the purpose. So if I'm going for an internship, am I going just because it's a part of my curriculum and I need a 2 months of internship? I'm a techie, and then what I'm looking at, did I get an internship with a very, say, a renowned bank? Just I want to do that because it adds to my CV, or actually I want to do internship to learn something.
Exactly.
Right? So the purpose and focus is not clear. Similarly, when I am appearing for a placements, am I looking to get a job that will fascinates me, and am I clear in terms of what I want to do, which will enhance my skill, or where I can apply my skill and do well? Or I am just applying because I need a job, and then when I need a job, I need a higher package. So it's just the compensation which is driving me. So I think that level of some sort of, I'm not saying it should be, maybe some soft skills aspect which we can prepare students to look at that, how the real life actually works outside the campus. That will be a big help for corporates, not only for, when we go and do hiring. We have a campus to connect program where we try to inculcate these aspects. But I will say that it will work well when it can be integrated inside the universities, and they know that, okay, and even when they're coming back from their internship, while submitting the report, if the faculty is also asked that, okay, what was the purpose, what you learned out of it, rather than just making it a bit that yes, 2 months curriculum, it was part of the curriculum, you did it, here is a certificate, and you got your grades.
So is the faculty also changing their attitude now? That is what I want to know, the uncomfortable question. What happens to school teachers with AI, with online learning? And are they ready for the change?
Look,
do students skip classes in your college, in your university?
That's an interesting question. I think, so look, I think students everywhere are the same, right? I think it's the onus is on the system, the onus is on the faculty to be able to ensure that they're consistently engaged. The onus is on us to be able to create the right kind of atmosphere, to provide the right kind of learning environment and the tools. That also means that faculties also will have to be able to evolve, right? Faculties will have to evolve to and a lot of faculty are. Let's be honest. I mean, a lot of faculty are. If you remember, go back to your days of which faculties you remember, which teachers you remember, and the way they were able to. You remember a few of their things as well. There are other faculty as well who are at the transition stage, right? Who are at the stage right now about should they be able to trust this? Or, students are using it for intellectual outsourcing, and doesn't make any sense. So I think that's where the institution can play a role. I think a lot of trust building is important, a lot of experimentation is important, a lot of investment by the institution is important to be able to experiment. Use these technologies to be able to help the students, use these technologies to be able to enhance your pedagogy. And I'm quite very, very pleasantly surprised. There are institutions out there who have also done this. They're using AI to be able to provide a certain kind of learning atmosphere, provide consistent engagement. They, whether they're teaching finance or whether they're teaching sociology, they are bringing elements of AI, into the picture. And that also shows in the feedback. That also shows in the kind of feedback that, those faculty are getting. So I think we're at that stage right now where a lot more nudge, a lot more positive motivation, facilitation will need to be provided to create a more mass-based adoption or something like this.
Yeah. And just to add to what Vishal said, it's like, use it, use will be excellent, only with a caveat that don't outsource it, just augment it. So use it so that they learn, but then keep that main objective of coaching students, preparing them.
Absolutely. So I think this is where, I think, like you mentioned, and coming back to your point, is that, where does a faculty see themselves? Are they seeing themselves as a mentor? Are they seeing themselves as a navigator? Are they seeing themselves as, people who are able to point in the right direction, for the students? So I think and that requires a lot of effort. That requires a lot of learning by themselves, right? How do you free your time up to be able to get that kind of learning? Obviously, you'll have to be able to, integrate certain technologies into your rhythm.
And you have to change with times, of course. What is the USP of your university, and how is the UK culture, academic culture especially, here in India's campus?
Look, we're obviously a global university, right? And the whole idea is that we're transitioning a lot of the thought, we're transitioning a lot of the curriculum, we're transitioning, global transnational education standards, assurance standards, faculty standards, research standards, centers of excellence into the Indian context. What you also have to remember is that, at the same time, it's not just about, us transitioning a lot of this, in the Indian context. It is also important that India, is in its own right created a very robust educational ecosystem. It is important for us to be able to, work with that ecosystem and, co-create a lot more learning, a lot more knowledge. And I think, a lot more stories from India need to go out, into the rest of the world, whether it's problem-solving stories, whether it's, we talk about the UPI, we talk about, the virus, the vaccine, for example. Right. A lot of these stories are all essentially solutions, right? And they should not be restricted to the Indian context. So I think for us, we are a global campus. We've always believed that to be truly global, you have to be able to be in India, right? And of course, bring in, certain standards of thought, bring in certain standards of learning, the kind of curriculum, but at the same time also co-create along with not just ourselves, but also with other universities and institutions in the country.
So to both of you, I'll ask this last question. In say 5 to 10 years, if you don't integrate with AI, where do you see the universities? I mean, which one will lead, which one will fall behind, which one will close?
Look, it's finally about learning experience. It's finally about learning experience and learning outcomes, right? What you have to remember is if you look at some information and data, the corporates have moved on, right? The industry has moved on. The industry's expectations have moved on. The students are also being able to utilize a lot of technology for themselves, right? So automatically that means that the university setups anywhere in the world will have to be able to use technology to augment the impact and the learning in the classroom, right? So I think there's no running away from it. The main issue is that what do we use it for? Do we use it for decision making? Do we use it for creating better judgment? Do we use it for creating what at times we call as we need to create more products in the country, right? So India needs to become a more product-based economy rather than a service-based economy, right? If we are able to use a lot of all that to be able to benefit the Indian economy, I think that's where we would have obviously won the battle.
Do you think
Absolutely
companies
wonderful.
could give feedback to universities? This is the kind of talent we need. Teach them this. This is how we want things to get done.
Yeah,
Have
absolutely.
more hackathons.
Absolutely, I think I'm a big vocal about industry academic collaboration, and what I mentioned about the BIT Mesra Lab, that is one of the initiative that we are taking, and absolutely this needs to be bridged, because why we are preparing, on one side you are preparing a workforce, on the other side it's disconnected with the real world, and adding to it, like with AI and with abundance of information, I think the universities can focus on preparing them to solve the problem outside, and teach them the art of going through the challenges. We talk about, we are not teaching them the skills of, okay, when you are under pressure, how are you going to deal with it, right? When you're working with someone whom you're you are not gelling up with, and still you need to deliver it, how are you delivering together in collaboration to achieve a common outcome? So I think the more focus of the education system is on IQ and very less on EQ. And if you see that EQ element is the one that is going to make you successful in the AI era. So it's more empathy, more how you enhance your interpersonal skills, your critical thinking, your problem solving skill, all which we talk about, but there is no such specific experiments or specific assignments we are giving in the universities. We talk about goal settings, for example. We talk about that if you have a larger goal to solve, you break it into smaller piece, how you handle your stress management. These things are not, we are not giving them the practical aspects in the universities. So with AI we can augment it, and a teacher can prepare it. It used to happen in the traditional education system, say for example in the Gurukul era, these things were taught. So I think now it's a time to bring those traditional aspects of Indian culture and integrate it with AI, and I think we will be preparing a workforce that will go out with a purpose, on a mission, and will understand that how they can create and change the shape of Indian economy.
Absolutely. So with two great teachers, I hope I have been a good student. Thank you so much to both of you for this lovely interaction, and we look forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So here's a learning today. For decades, India's higher education system built its ambition on the assumption that quality had to be rationed, that the best education could only reach the few who competed hardest for it. AI is the first technology that challenges that assumption at its root. Whether we use it well enough and fast enough to reach the 3 in 4 students who the current system is still leaving behind, that is a question our institutions will answer in the years ahead. Vishal and Mayank, thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vishal.
Thank you very much, Mayank.
Before we go, the TOI AI Quotient Awards are coming this September, and nominations are open now. If your institution, your organization, or your team is genuinely building with AI, using it to reach more students, deliver better outcomes, or solve a problem the traditional system couldn't, we want to recognize you. Head to the AIQ Awards microsite and nominate today. The work you're doing in education, in business, in every industry that AI is touching, it deserves to be seen. See you in the next episode.